Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, a podcast to encourage, educate, and equip you to care for children and youth through adoption, foster, and kinship care. Hosted by an adoptive mom with over 22 years of kinship and adoptive parenting experience. She's on this journey with you. Please welcome Sandra Flach.
But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. And of course, that is Galatians 5:22 and 23. I'm your host, Sandra Flach. Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, a podcast to encourage and equip you for your parenting journey. I'm a mom of 8, 5 through adoption, and that includes 2 young adults who are now 19 and 22. Can't believe I'm saying that. They are both diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome. So I know the struggles that come with raising kids with trauma histories and prenatal exposure to alcohol and other drugs. So my hope is that you will find this podcast to be an invaluable resource. So speaking of resources, a little teaser out there about my upcoming, hopefully soon to be released devotional. It is titled Soul Care Saturday, 52 Devotions for Foster and Adoptive Moms. And it will be releasing this fall. We're aiming for November for National Adoption Awareness Month. So stay tuned to the podcast and to our socials and to our website for all of the details so that you don't miss out when we do the release. So I'm also excited to announce that finally the updated Justice for Orphans website is now live. You can go to justicefororphansny.org, and right there on the homepage is a big, beautiful circle. I think there's 3 circles. So the one all the way to the left is the Adoption and Foster Care Journey. And when you click on that circle, it will take you to all of the AFC Journey things. That includes this podcast, my blog, all of our upcoming FASD workshops, the Hope support group if you wanted to register for that, and a list of my recommended resources, lots of things there. So once you click that button, you feel like you're just in adoption and foster care journey world, right? Justice for Orphans is the nonprofit that I founded about 14 years ago. And all of this work that we do here that you're listening to has been birthed out of that. But we also do Care Portal, where we have served over 13,000 children in crisis throughout New York State, and really just our region of the state in the capital region. We do other things. We have our thrift store. If you listen to my interview with Sue Roseberger, you know about the work that we're doing through that. So we do lots of things, but if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably mostly interested in the adoption and foster care journey stuff. So now it's super easy to find all of it in one location on our new website. So please go check it out, and you can scroll down in the show notes for a link that will take you right to our website. So little explanation about that. And of course, we do have our new socials. They're still new, fairly new. That we created so that instead of just posting all of this stuff on the Justice for Orphans socials, we have our own adoption and foster care journey socials. So you can find us on Instagram at AFC_journey and on Facebook at the Adoption and Foster Care Journey. So I maintain those pages for the most part. So I'm the one usually doing the posting. So if you comment or leave a message or ask a question or any of those things, you'll get to me that way as well. But we would love for you to like and follow them and share the stuff that we post there. That would be great too. And I would love to meet you in person. So we've got kicking off. I know this is the beginning of September, and we are kicking off I've got 2 months packed full of travel where I'll be speaking. So I'd love to connect with you if you're in any of the places. Right around the corner, just in a matter of days, I will be in Ohio leading an FASD workshop for the Hope Bridge folks on that Saturday, September 6th in Hartsville, Ohio. Registration is on the Hope Bridge website, and I do believe we still have a link in the show notes if you are still interested in getting out there for that one. And then I'll be also in Washington, D.C. This is not in the show notes anywhere, but I will be in Washington, D.C. I forget the dates. It's a couple of weeks after I'm in Ohio, and that is for the FASD United Impact Week. So I'll be bringing my son Slava with me. And we're going to be doing lots of learning and connecting and advocating in the space of FASD. So stay tuned to our social media for that, because you will get to see pictures of Slava and I hanging out in DC with a whole bunch of other FASD advocates and folks. So that's going on. And then in October, I will be in Houston, Texas, for the Christian Alliance for Orphans CAFO Summit. And that is October 1st through 3rd, where I'll be leading an FASD workshop called Hope Beyond Frustration, Incremental Growth Through Simple and Consistent Practices. So there's the workshop, and then I'll also be hosting a meetup. They'll be assigning us a room where folks who are connected to FASD, right? Us parents and caregivers. And if you're bringing your kids and they have FASD, they're welcome to join us as well. I won't have Slava with me in Houston, but I will be there, and we're going to just connect. And it's an opportunity for fellowship and, just some discussion, some prayer at the end. So I hope that if you're able to come to Houston for the CAFO Summit, you will check out both of those things, as well as I'll have an exhibitor table with all kinds of resources, and you can meet up with me there as well, get a selfie. And then after that, I will be also in October, I will be at the Replanted Conference. And that is October 23rd through the 25th. I'll also be leading a workshop there. That one is called Wired Differently, Understanding FASD, Trauma, and the Brain. And I'll have a booth there as well where you can connect with me. So if you are on this journey and you've never been to a foster adoptive parent retreat or conference like this, I highly, highly recommend it. It is an amazing opportunity to get your cup filled. So I recommend that. So now, on to our show today, because it is September, which is International FASD, Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorders Awareness Month. All of our September episodes, and there are 5 of them, will focus on FASD specifically. And we're going to kick off today with not just one, but 2 amazing dad guests. We have Carl Young and Joel Sheagren. They are 2 fathers on a mission to transform the way the world understands and supports neurodiverse families. Between them, they have raised children with FASD, autism, ADHD, and trauma, and turned their personal challenges into a movement for systemic change. Carl brings over 20 years of policy advocacy, shaping laws at the state and federal levels, while Joel, an award-winning filmmaker and storyteller, harnesses the power of media to shift hearts and minds. Together, they co-created Embracing Hope, the first integrated approach to FASD, autism, ADHD, and trauma, crafted with kitchen table wisdom and over 18 months and 487 and a half gallons of coffee in the process to make it, by their calculations, the most caffeinated parenting guide ever written. The Embrace movement spans books, films, technology, and training, bridging lived experience with real-world solutions so families and communities can move from survival to thriving. So please welcome Carl Young and Joel Sheagren. Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure. We appreciate you having us on.
Oh my goodness. I'm super excited. I know Joel has been on the show years ago, I think it was. I don't even want to try to remember when it was. And then Carl, you were a guest in our support group not too long ago. So finally we're having you here. So having you both together, I'm super excited. I know a little bit about both of you, or maybe a lot, depending on but anyway, we want our listeners to know more about you. So I'm going to I'll ask you each this question. I guess we could start with Joel because I also know your wife, Kim, because she's a member of our FASD Journey support group. So you guys have two adopted kids. Would you tell us a little bit about your family?
Yeah, so God uh, arranged our family in a pretty unique way, and we were asked out of the blue to adopt our son. And I had had a dream months earlier that we would be handed a blanket and a little boy inside, and he'd be joined by a little girl. And the dream went on, and it was one of those vivid dreams that you have to write down. And I thought narcissistically, two parts of the business. And then we were asked out of the blue at a conference that was not on adoption to if we would be interested in adopting. And out of my mouth came yes. And I remembered the dream before the word yes was finished. Um, we met the birth mother through the person who we had just met 30 minutes earlier, actually. Um, and a week later, we met the birth mother, and it was really interesting. I won't get into those details, but it was just interesting hearing her story and all of those kinds of things. We believe she has undiagnosed FASD. Just knowing the history, we have an open relationship with her. We brought our son home from the hospital 2 months, 2.5 months after that ask, so extremely fast. We were not on a list. We weren't thinking about adoption, and here that question came out of the blue. And 2.5 months later, we had a little boy in the house, just like the dream. And all of the legal pieces were in place. And 2 years later, because we had an open relationship, the birth mother, asked us if we would help deliver our daughter. So we were in the birth room uh, to see our beautiful little daughter get born, and she's now married. So, woohoo!
Yes. Yeah.
It both have been impacted um, by alcohol. Our son, it took us 14 years, pretty common story, to figure out what was going on with the root behaviors. And the chaos was over the top 100% all the time, not knowing how to parent our son that was impulsive and all of the other kinds of things that go hand in hand with the brain wiring that comes with being impacted by alcohol. And so, in that context, our daughter, in terms of her impact, isn't behavior. And as I started to learn about all of the FASD types of things and how to parent different, the light bulbs were going off. Oh, that eye therapy she had at fourth grade, that's the impact of alcohol. Oh, her processing speed that's a little slower. Oh, she has trouble with abstract thinking, etc. And interesting enough, in June during Father's Day, she took me out to dinner and she had said, I think I need an FASD diagnosis within
Mm.
5 minutes of being in the car. And it was like, oh my goodness. And so we talked briefly about some of the things that I just mentioned and kept it short. And I said, what's really more important is learning how to work with the symptoms, because getting a diagnosis as an adult is harder than it is as children, and in the pediatric world, it's hard enough, let alone the adult world. So she can only focus on one thing at a time. And right now it's marriage and school and work, and those are three things. And so she's overwhelmed. Uh,
Incredible.
yeah, but the Embraced project, the Embrace movement that the book is part of, came out of learning how to parent Sam different.
Mhm.
And the chaos 8 years later, from a parenting perspective, is maybe 1%, 2% at most in a given year. And that's what we've packed into the book. And that doesn't mean that his brain differences have gone away. It just means the chaos in the home is no longer the craziness that it once was.
Yeah, and we're going to get to unpacking the book because I'm super excited to be able to talk about that. But I also wanted our listeners to get to know Carl. In your story, I know you and your wife. How do you pronounce your wife's name?
Mullet.
Millette.
Yeah, we had a
Yep.
telemarketer once ask for a mallet, and I responded and said, "Let me go to the garage and get her out of the toolbox." Yeah, there was nothing left. So, Mullet. Yeah,
Millette.
it's kind of a French origin. So, which is weird because her background is German. My wife and I have been married 31 years, and that's to me is a significant thing. We have 5 children, one of which came to us through foster care, and he is the one that was ultimately diagnosed with FASD. And we have 3 grandchildren, maybe 4, whether it's a fourth one potentially coming. So we're excited. The grandchildren are the gift you didn't know you needed.
Right.
I would have waited until I was older to have them, but it's not my decision. So, I was. I began on the neurodiversity journey with one of my kids was diagnosed with autism early on, and then when our youngest came into the picture, and I had to shut down my consulting business and focus on his care full time because of his needs. So that's where I learned how to speak all of the things, and a lot of people don't like it when you tell them you're doing it wrong. So I had to learn how to say that in a way that wasn't offensive. And then uh, I was diagnosed with FASD last year. So at 52 years of age. And Joel, like Joel said, it's difficult as a young child or a teenager to get that diagnosis. It's just as hard when you're an adult. So, I think in some ways it's harder. So, um, the book is everything I wish I would have known when my
Mm,
son was little.
yeah.
And we had chaos beyond chaos. And my son was aggressive, and he still is sometimes, but he's 24 and living on his own. Um, but yes, it's everything I wish I'd known when I was younger, and all of the things I've learned through the course of this book and working with Joel the last 2 years and the 6 years that I've known Joel have just been an incredible blessing. So
Yeah. I love that. And I feel the same way because when we started, oh, actually, so I have 8 kids, 5 through adoption. And Carl, I have 9 grandchildren. And in early next year, 2 more are going to be born. But when you have 8 kids, your rate of grandchildren is going to quickly multiply.
exponential.
Yes, very much so. And they are the gift that you didn't know you needed for sure. I always say it's better than having kids. Next time I'm just going to go right to the grandchildren and skip the having the kids part. But love them tremendously. But also our like we had 3 biological children and then our first child that came in and we weren't thinking about, oh, let's adopt, let's do foster care, any of that. I meant to say wasn't on our radar. But a little girl came into our family that was a relative, so a kinship placement. She was 8 years old when she came. We knew nothing about trauma. We knew nothing about anything that's in your book, nor did we ever know we would need to know. We didn't know anything. And because she didn't go into foster care, she came to us. We didn't even have foster parent training classes. So we just did all of the wrong things because we did all of the things we would do what we're doing for our biological children who are all neurotypical. And then several years later, we adopted a sibling set of 4 from Ukraine. And it was the youngest one out of that group. My son Slava, who will be with me when we go to DC, he was 5 when he came home. And we were, same thing, like it was chaos. we were not equipped. We knew we were not equipped. Highly suspected, because I had read a teeny tiny little bit of thing about fetal alcohol syndrome prior to adopting, because they're all adopted from Ukraine. So had heard Eastern Europe FAS is common. So when we met him, we were like, oh, this must be that FAS thing. But so two of the boys, the youngest two, did get diagnosed when they were 6 and 8. But they were diagnosed with ADHD and FAS. And the developmental pediatrician handed us a pamphlet on ADHD and said, you might want to focus on life skills. Have a nice day. And there was nothing. So even though we got a diagnosis, there was nothing. So I agree. Your book, this book that you have written, is really a book I wish I had had all of those years. I don't know how many years it was, but like the first one came to our home, our daughter, who we adopted through kinship, in 1999. Wished I had this book back then. It would have made the world of difference, but we have it now. And we all know what we know now, and we want to share that with our listeners and everybody else, just to make sure that, they have the support and the resources and can understand, because it will only help their families. So a little bit, so I'll ask you both this question, and you might have sort of unpacked it a little bit, telling us about your families. But Joel, when was the first time you learned about FASD? Like, how did that come about?
When our son was diagnosed.
So when he got that, and how old was he?
14.
14.
Yeah, and so Kim had an inkling a couple of times, Kim being my wife, had an inkling a couple of times along some developmental delays that had happened, like maybe age 3 and maybe age 8, somewhere in there. And we were gifted with a very long, I don't know, 12-page medical history when we adopted. And the birth mother was forthright about her drinking during both of our children. And so I have all sorts of noises and things that are going off. Sorry for the noise.
We can't
But
hear
I
it.
thought I've turned off. So this computer started talking at me, and it's like, I don't know. Anyway, um I've lost my train of thought because of all the noise. Sorry.
You had the two.
So
Yeah.
the 2 times, and Kim did not pursue it, and I just vaguely remember those conversations, but she didn't pursue it because what would it do to help was her process.
Yeah.
It's only going to add stigma. We don't need a label, et cetera, et cetera. And we knew nothing. So if there were any inkling of knowing anything, that was about the extent of it, which is super vague, right? To gather anything. And I'm sitting there listening to the diagnosis, and we were at Proof Alliance. It was then had a different name. And I'm thinking to myself, how come I don't know anything about this?
Mhm.
And just a little bit during that process, I was looking at prevalence, and I'm like shocked at it being so much more prevalent than autism, and yet I had no inkling.
Yeah.
And so in that context, I just started really pressing in, how do I parent different? And as a filmmaker, photographer, how do we bring awareness to this issue?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how the Embrace Movement project started, which has expanded both in profiles that we're covering and media channels that we're covering. So,
And we're going to get to that. I'm so excited to hear all that you are doing, to impact the community. And then Carl, also elaborate a little bit on your son, when you found out about FASD. How did that go?
Our son was in a residential facility's autism unit. And they called, and I had daily calls with staff there. And they said, we don't know what we're seeing, but we don't think we're seeing autism. And they were all experts, or viewed as experts in their community. So I said, well, what do you think it is? And they said, well, we think he might have been exposed to alcohol. And I said, well, I know mom, because he had to go through withdrawals from meth. And then I started reviewing the information, and we were actually discouraged from pursuing the FASD diagnosis. But we didn't, we ignored that discouragement. And so our son was 14, almost 15 when we got the diagnosis, about this same time frame as when Joel's son got his. And still no services. So
Yeah. Yeah, we were like I said, my boys were diagnosed at 6 and 8. And so when the doctor didn't give us any resources, I went home and researched it a little bit online. And what I found at that time, several years ago, were, what we now know are the tertiary symptoms, right? Like if if your child has this FASD, or back then it was just fetal alcohol syndrome, then what you have to look forward to is a future of, they're going to be homeless, incarcerated, addicted, commit suicide. Like that was the only thing out there, which was scary and dark and hopeless. So I just turned off the computer and said, "Oh, we're not doing that." I didn't know what we were going to do, but we're not doing that. And at that time, I threw myself into learning all of the connected parenting stuff, the trauma informed stuff, which helped for sure until they became teenagers. And I know, like you guys are saying, like your boys are around 14, 15. And we had the diagnosis, but by the time they were in their teenagers, it was like, okay, this dumpster fire like we have connection and attachment and all of that stuff. What is going on? And I suspected it was the FASD. And then when I began to do research, I found facets and I found FASD United. And finally there was some positive, stuff out there that I could access and begin to implement. And that's where that journey started for me. What did you guys do once you learned about it? And like, we got the diagnosis. Okay, now what? How did you learn to become, to do brain-based parenting essentially?
I'll go. There were a couple of things. One was if you dig hard enough, you'll find things online. But it takes some research and some poking around because most everything that's on there is more theoretical and research based. It's not from a parent base. Here's things to do at home. It was more what's been done in a clinic and those kinds of research, which are important and valuable. I'm not discrediting that because that's really a huge foundation to get things started on. And then I took some of the people who had been through facets. Um, I had taken a free class. Somebody recommended it, a parent group from Proof, um, to read Diane Melvin's book. And so that was really helpful. And so those began, and I actually ended up having some email exchanges and a number of phone conversations with her because I had questions as a filmmaker. How do I navigate things? And so I ended up with a number of her white papers that she made available that aren't necessarily public. They may be now because I had questions about sexuality that's not part of that. It's like, and now we understand more of why that's the case. But anyway, it was just piecing things together. And I think the real big breakthrough was Jared Brown. He's here in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And I had a chance to interview him for the documentary. And then I had a chance to get to know him, and we talk weekly.
Yeah, and he's a
So that,
frequent guest on this podcast. And right now we're doing a monthly series, so he will be one of our guests for September as well. Dr. Jared Brown has been a phenomenal resource for sure.
yeah. So he has one more master's degree to add to our into our forward now because he now has the nutrition side.
Yes.
But I've learned so much from him over the years about how to help our son think about his thoughts. And that's primarily what we focused on in our book is the metacognition part of it. Are you sure you really want to do that for somebody you love rather than move towards in anger and those kinds of things, which only escalate things? You just ask questions that kind of trigger their thought. Do you really want to hurt somebody that you love? You know, as a simple example, an important one, but a simple example. So Jared has been pointing us to, and I have white paper after white paper after white paper that he has forwarded, that he has prolifically written with a
Yeah.
number of people over the years. So I have a stack of white papers that he has been able to provide and to learn from. And so the resources are far and few between without that heavy lifting. And like Carl, I had to shut down my commercial business to really focus on parenting. And not everybody's in that place.
No, two dedicated dads for sure. And I don't know if parents necessarily realize that sometimes that's the step we have to take because that's how crucial this is for our kids, right? And the greater FASD community. Certainly, right? God has a plan here, and you guys are a big part of that. What about you, Carl? How did you learn to become FASD informed and apply those brain-based principles?
Well, I didn't get into the brain-based principles until after my son left home, unfortunately. Um, I'm a researcher by background. One of the things I was doing before I shut down my business is I was working on my dissertation and studying autism in the business community. Um, so the research is where I headed because I'm like, I need answers. And
Mhm.
I annoyed Dr. Bird so often that he gave me his cell phone number and said, call me anytime. And so, and I did. I had to set a thing on my sticky note on my wall that says "Don't call after 8 p.m." So, because I would have a thought at 2 o'clock in the morning and be pounding away on my keyboard and sending emails and Dr. Bird said, "Well, don't you ever sleep?" And I said, "No, not really." So it's the hypervigilance part. But I didn't get into the brain-based approach until after he left home. And now I see all of the things that I might have done different. I used to write a blog about our journey and adventures in parenting and battling the system. And now I tell parents, I say, if you want to know how not to parent a child with neurodiversity, then you should go read my blog.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I agree. I like that. The same thing with our first daughter who came in because we didn't know, and as our kids were older, and our youngest two got diagnosed, and eventually I found Diane Melvin's book and I read it. I got copies for all of my adult kids, including this particular daughter, because by then she was in her late 20s. And she came back to me and she said, I think I have this. Do you think I have this? And she was a case where she was a relative. Her mom had died of cancer and,
Mm.
had other health conditions where she was told she couldn't get pregnant. She wasn't married. She had a professional career and was many, many weeks into a pregnancy before she realized, much to her joy, that she was pregnant. But I'm guessing it was probably around 10 weeks into her pregnancy when she discovered she was pregnant, and up until that time was probably just drinking socially on the weekends. And we all know now that's all it takes. But was very careful to say, if you do, your mom had no idea. She didn't even know she was pregnant the first 10 weeks. So, and I know your mom after she got pregnant and how thrilled she was and how she was doing all of the right things because, once she knew she was doing all the right things. So, but yet with her, because we didn't even understand trauma, and then we had no clue that she could have had prenatal exposure. Again, we did all the wrong things, right? Traditional parenting is actually the wrong thing when you're parenting a child with neurodiversity, trauma, FASD, autism, all of it. So, we learn as we go and wish we could go back and change things. I have a great relationship with her now. She's in her 30s and she's married and she actually lives closer to Carl than she lives closer to me because she's in Wyoming. And but yet still we notice things, even as a young adult, as an adult, that we can clearly, like, okay, that's symptoms, right? When you know them, and you can see it. But she and her husband make it work, and they're doing well. So Yeah, I hear you on, you don't know what you don't know. And then when you do know, right, you want to make sure that everybody knows that. So let's dive into your book. I'm super excited. It is, I'll hold it up for any of our listeners who may be actually watching on YouTube. And I'll post some pictures on our social media as well. But the book is Embracing Hope, Innovative Strategies to Empower Parents Raising Neurodiverse Teens. And that includes autism, ADHD, FASD, and trauma. So, how did you guys get together and decide, hey, let's write a book?
Joel,
Uh,
please.
yeah, so Carl and I met in 2017 at a conference, and we stayed in touch off and on. And a couple years ago, I wanted to interview him and Dr. Bird, and so uh, a fellow team member and I drove up to North Dakota and did that, and um, started learning a little bit more about some of Carl's work that he's doing in schools and social work and policy. And I had outlined some CEUs that I thought would be valuable that we could also use some of the documentary interviews into to help with those. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, would you be interested in helping with developing some CEUs under the Embraced in Movement project? I was thinking documentary and maybe CEUs and had the idea of an app. And that's about as far as the documentary was real and I had interviews. The others were something, that was a potential. And so I was reaching out to Carl to see if we could start making that a reality. And he goes, yeah, I'd love to, but why don't you help me develop a slide deck? I'm training social workers in North Dakota on FASD, and I would love some help. So I think we had 70 pages of neuroscience that we had come up with slide decks. Carl's like, oh, we should turn this into a book. And I said, well, that's interesting because I've been thinking the same thing. And I started writing in the background a book on the making of the Embrace movement because I had way too many interviews. I do have way too many interviews for that can not everybody's going to make it into the documentary. And I want to honor everyone because every person has lended a really valuable insight, and I wanted to honor that. And I uploaded the first interview that I had ever done, which was happened to be Dr. Jones of all people. And it was 45 pages long. And I'm like, oh, this isn't going to work. If I have 100 people, we'll have volumes. And so I had started in on trying to figure out how to navigate a book that would be valuable, not just the interview, but would be useful for parents and start to assimilate some of the things that I had been learning. Um, and so as Carl and I were talking, it's like, well, maybe we need to really focus on parents because that's our wheelhouse, right?
Mhm.
And one thing led to another. So anyway, I'd asked Carl to come alongside this, and he asked me to come alongside him. And the next thing you know, we're dancing on the ballroom floor with lots of coffee, trying to ideate about how to navigate a book. And I think we originally had a different name. Well, I know we do, but we ended up switching the name. And then when Carl was diagnosed, in the middle of us writing this book, I said, well, your name's going first because you're going to walk through the door and take the bullets. You have lived experience.
Mhm.
So your name needs to go first because people are going to call first. And so that's kind of how the whole book in a nutshell developed. And I'll let Carl fill in some of the missing details.
Well, the book is really as massive as it is a fraction of what we came up with during the journey of writing the book. And we could easily write probably 3 or 4 volumes, wouldn't you say, Joel? So,
Well, yeah, and part of that's going to land on the website
yeah, and yeah.
as
So
as resources. Yeah.
right. So we looked at, so we started looking at, is this something we could put on our website as a resource for parents or as a strategy for parents? And so we started trimming, and we're not throwing away all of that other information because it is really valuable information, but we're also not sticking it in a book and making the book 3 times the size that it is, because nobody's going to want to pick up a 1,500-page book and say, let me read this. So, but it's been an incredible journey to get this far. And there's a few times over the course, I think, where each Joel and I, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joel, got frustrated with the other person and took a break and did other things for a bit. During the process, we stopped and we wrote a grant for a program, for our game that Joel was talking about. And we took a break I took a break and did some script writing for a video series the state of North Dakota asked me to record on FASD. And so we worked it out, but it has been an incredible journey to get to this point. I don't know that I would have done this without Joel. I think Joel could have done it without the research aspect. He would have accomplished the research aspect, but I'm a researcher. I'm not so much the storyteller. So it's a unique blend that we didn't want the book to read like a science textbook. So, and for a while there, it looked like a science textbook. So, and we actually had a couple of different people, and we had people around the world review different pieces of the book, and tell us, oh, this sounds like this person in my life or that person in my life. And we had different people tell us, this really needs to be taught in the college level.
Mm.
So,
Oh, yeah, that's another whole thing. And I'm finding it because as I'm reading it as a parent, I'm not a scientist or a researcher or, that kind of thing. But it is really a parent's guide to practically understand the brain and how to parent kids with brain differences, like autism and ADHD and FASD. Because some of us have kids with all of it, right? Some of us have kids, our listeners, primarily adoptive and foster parents like us. All of our kids have some level of trauma. And then, the three of us in this conversation, all of our kids have FASD. And then I know my son also has the ADHD diagnosis, and a lot of us that often goes hand in hand with FASD, and then so many parents also have an autism diagnosis with their kids. So to have one book that covers all of it together, so we don't have to sit and figure out, so is this behavior because of FASD or is it because of trauma? It is all in there. So I love that. So walk us a little bit through what we will find in the book.
Yeah, so we've set it up to be a mixture of story and a mixture of brain science. Um, and the brain science is, think of it like developing a photograph, right? It's that kind of language. Think of it, the amygdala as the weather station, or you've got to be a weather forecaster and you're going to see the storm on the horizon. So it's more of that type of language. But we do have the citations in there in that regard. The the structure of it is that we have 15 core conversations, and the chapters are meant to be read in a half hour. They're 20 some pages long. So when you get it, it's 500 pages long, 400 of it is content, and the another 100 pages of Carl's citations and research footnotes in there. So it can be, oh my goodness, it looks intimidating, but it's really set up to be, I want to learn about how to help my child with self-esteem or impulsivity. And you can read that in a half hour,
Yeah.
from cover to cover, so to speak, by the chapter. So we've set it up with 10 uh, components that are found in 13 of the 15 core conversations. So um, chapter 5 is on adaptive skills versus IQ, because that's a
Yes.
yep.
I
And
was going to ask about that.
yeah, and we have some elements that are story based and the brain science in there, but it doesn't flow the same as chapter 6 through 18. And then chapter 19 is on sleep, nutrition, and exercise. And those are shorter interventions that sometimes need more professional help. But the idea is, how does a parent that is in rural Alaska, rural Iowa, rural North Dakota, etc., New York, find help because they may not have access or resources? And so we've developed things like the Mind Shifter board game. And we don't have that on the market, but here's how you make it. You might need to go buy a poster board, but let's work through how to help your child with uh, a board game on cause and effect, which is chapter 13. And we have 4 components that are what if for one set of questions, the feelings are another set of questions, the choices, and then actions. And so you can do that at home. You might need something from the box store, like a poster board, but for the most part, markers and piece of paper, you can handwrite the questions. We put all of that in there. And then um, I think we have 3 times, 4 times as many questions on the website just because you can't put it all in the book. So those are some value that we wanted to add in that regard. So it's the metacognition. The mind shifter game is all about helping our children think through how they're thinking to make better choices. Is it the silver bullet? None of them are, right? It's a combination of it. It's a combination of how safe they feel, how you respond, all of those kinds of things. But anyway, that's kind of how it came about. It was just getting creative with story and putting a definition behind what is perseveration. How do you
Mhm.
say perseveration? Uh, Something that's worth noting. Um, I have a funny story here in a second on perseveration, but so it goes anecdotal story, part A, to help the parent understand how their teen might be facing a situation at school or at work, those kinds of things. A definition, and then something that's worth noting. And then we provide some symptoms, and that's where we started to cut. I'll come back to that. Three symptoms, and then we put a chart so that you can see a few other symptoms. And then we get into the interventions, and we have anywhere from 1 to 4 interventions per chapter, which by the time you're all done add up quite a bit. And then we tell part B of the story, anecdotal story, with one of our fictional characters. And we base it on one of the interventions. So one of those interventions that you read about, here's how an adult worked with our fictional character to achieve a better result, or at least get the process started. And then we tell a personal story, and then we have a haiku. Just take a break for a second, and then go to the neuroscience. And we focused on 3 brain regions rather than all of them, and they're not necessarily the most important. It's just 3 that you um, might want to pay attention to. And then we got creative with what the Canadians have made real popular for diagnosing FASD, and that's called the brain regions, or I'm sorry, the brain domains. There's 10 brain domains, which are how we're wired, the memory, the executive function, how we regulate, and um, and we did the research. Carl did most of the research on how does that land for, say, perseveration, which brain domains are really involved in that process. And the reason that we do that is here's the baton to go talk to your educator, to talk to your pediatrician, to talk to your therapist with. So it's really intended to be a tool to help you understand a conversation with professionals who may or may not get it. So,
And that's not to, pardon Joel, that's not to say that I did all of the research, because there's times when Joel would send me some article and say, can you look more into this or expand on this idea? And that research led to other things. So, I love research. I love reading these long scientific articles and making sense of them. Not everybody likes that, but that's just my neurospicy brain. So, but and then and personal stories are a mix. They're like there's some about my life after I got diagnosed, and that made so much sense in my life. Where I talk about impulse control or sensory issues. So, and then there's some from Joel, or some regarding my son, and so. But we tried to make it not just fiction, but personal. We're sharing our lives, or small pieces of our lives, snippets or snapshots, in order to help you understand that we're just trying to make sense of what you're seeing with your child.
Yeah, and I love because you explain the science, science tech part of it, with the brain in easy to understand, language, ways that a parent, who's not an expert. I mean, I've learned and talk about the brain more now than I ever have in my entire life, right? Um, but I love the anecdotal stories and the characters. And now I read Embracing Zach, written by Jodi Culp. So when I get to your book, which is Embracing Hope, and what characters show up, but the same endearing characters from Embracing Zach are the characters that you use in your book to kind of paint the picture of what this looks like in a kid's day to day at school, that kind of thing. So how did you guys connect with, I just out of curiosity, how did you connect with Jodi Culp and, have your characters come into our book kind of thing?
yeah, so early on, Jodi, she just lives, I don't know, less than 10 miles away. And yeah, and so we just became best of friends. And pre-lockdown, we would spend time ideating on this, that, and the other at the public library. And we'd get together often and talk about this, that, and the other regarding the documentary and what could go hand in hand with that. And at one point, I had written a school story based on the interviews. So even though they're anecdotal using fictional character, I sometimes say fictional, that's not a word, fictional characters, um, they're based on the interviews that I've had and the stories that people have told us, right? And so even in some of the things that I would be wordsmithing along, I'd put a parentheses and an X. Carl, can you research this? Because I remember this in some interview that I did with an epidemiologist or with a epigenetic person, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have the research behind it. I just remember that was said. And so Carl would hunt those things down, and or the stories were developed out of some of those even research kinds of things. So I had written a school story as a funding tool for the documentary, and I'd asked Jodi to be my cheerleader. And and it was intended to be the last scene in the documentary. I wanted the documentary to be interviews woven together with a fictional character from birth to high school, and then leave it open-ended for what happens after high school for another part of potentially another media outlet. And so I did the story, I did the interview 3 times with a mom whose daughter had been kicked out of school, expelled, written up, permanent record for something her daughter never did. Her daughter was involved in the situation that had happened at school. She got blamed for it by others. And of course, our kids with their short attention span and not understanding cause and effect, they have the attention span of a gnat, right? Like, yeah, whatever. I'll sign whatever. They don't even read it, understand it, know what they're being blamed for. And her daughter was kicked out of school just before she graduated. And I'm like, this is incredulous, right? And so I came at it 3 different times and um, to want to see the different aspects. And Jody was my cheerleader. And I had a fictional character because our kids are superheroes and we don't want to reveal their identity. And Jody called me a few months later and said, "Do you mind if I snag that school story? I want to take the baton and run with what happened to what is now Zach." And so I became a cheerleader daily, weekly, along with some other of her friends in that process. So the first chapter is really based on the interview and the school story I had written in embracing Zach and some of the themes that we found in there. And it's also, we went through 9 schools to have our son graduated, and we have the privilege of being in a metro area where you can, didn't work here, let's go there. No, he's gonna refuse to go to school at that one. So you got to find another school. And so some of that is in that school story as well. And one thing led to another, when Jody was done with her draft, I had invited Justin Overlander, who is the original producer, one of the first producers of The Chosen, the TV series The Chosen. He happens to live in the metro area. We're friends. And I sat him down when he had stepped away because he really, the time commitment was overwhelming after 4 years to get it off the ground and co-produce the first 2 seasons. And I didn't realize it was the first week. I just knew he had stepped away. And I said, "Hey, can we go to coffee? I've got this idea." And he politely said no during coffee. And he had been a school teacher before getting into film. And he read the school story and said, "Oh, my word." He called me back a week later and said, "I have to be a part of this." I had no idea. So Justin, I had roped him into a conversation with Jody when she was done with the draft. And uh, the 3 of us started meeting on what would a script look like for a feature film. And so the script started informing the shape of Jody's book before it went live, and it started informing the feature film script. So we have a feature film script based on Jody's novel, and Q and Shay are in there as well. And so we've picked up on those 3 characters, Zach, Q, and Shay. And then her trauma character was an adult from being a war vet.
Yes, I remember that in the book.
Yep, yep. And so we just snagged that trauma side of it and made it Kennedy and a teenager that's part of that teen group. So there's 4 teens. The Zach with FASD represents that, Shay with ADHD, Q with autism, and Kennedy with trauma. So that's kind of how the long story of how it developed in a short, it's a short piece of it, but it's still kind of a long story in how that all developed. And so in the world of filmmaking, it's technically called transmedia storytelling, where you're telling different parts of the story in different channels to cross-pollinate audiences. Star Wars, it's books, it's movies, it's TV shows, it's the empire, it's the fight against evil, etc., good against evil, told in a variety of ways. And so it's a bit of that from a technical standpoint, that we're telling multiple channels. And it's become the novel. Jody puts it under the umbrella of the Embrace movement, the feature film that we're starting to fundraise for, Embracing Hope with our caregiver book, We have a book that we've already written that we'll edit once we get some other things underway here with Embracing Hope called, we're switching the name and it'll be called Embracing Different. And we weave our 4 characters into that as a church resource. And it's much shorter. And it's 5 chapters, I think. And it just walks church leaders through how to work with Q, how to work with Shay and all that energy and that quote, being different. Because it is a common thing for our kids to be asked to leave, families asked to be leave. We, in fact, were given a legal letter to never come back
To church.
to church. No questions, no conversations, just, and we have no idea if confabulation was involved by somebody else because that person has FASD. And my wife and that mom were best of friends, are best of friends to this day. And so the church really needs to wake up and understand there is a whole theology around embracing disability. If you go look at the story of Christ and turning the tables over, take a close look at what was part of his being upset at, not giving access to the disenfranchised to the temple.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a big theology in the scriptures. Take care of the poor, take care of the disenfranchised. And so just feel really honored that we can take some of our experience and put it into that. And I think that will grow with the same kind of book and resource for law enforcement and social workers. And that's kind of the vision behind it. But it's just 2 dads drinking a lot of coffee at this point. So
yeah, I was going to say, Joel, we have a folder on our shared drive of future book ideas, and I think there's 6 or 7 books in there that we have potential outlines for. I don't know that we're ever going to get to all of them because we have so many things we would love to accomplish, but we're just 2 dads. But we're also 2 dads that care deeply.
Yeah.
And Carl, I don't remember any stepping away because we had scuffles. I remember taking a break because we had.
Well, it wasn't that we scuffled; it was that we were tired.
Yes. I was going to say, I look forward to jumping on a Zoom call and spending time.
Joel and I live about 6 hours away from each other, and there have been times where we've met halfway in between in Fargo. I've never shown him the wood chipper in Fargo, and there is a wood chipper in Fargo from the movie. And we'll get together for coffee for a day, and we'll spend the day just visiting and looking at things and reviewing our, what information we had. And we had a number of those kinds of days. Or if I'm down in the cities for something, for a conference for like Proof Alliance or something, and then we'll get together there. And that's where I actually met Jody, is at the same conference where I met Joel. And I don't live as close, but Jody and I have had some incredible conversations over the years about FASD and neurodiversity as a whole. So she is just one of those people that is phenomenal to know.
Yeah, and she actually did the final design on her book. Our book was designed by a gal in Colombia, South America, and she's done a number of logos and brand kinds of things. And we've got to know each other and just dearly love her. And I was mentioning in the book, and of course she wanted to take it on. And I was thinking, well, maybe just develop a template because I don't know enough Spanish to give you direction on all of that. She knows a whole lot more English than we do Spanish. But there was a language barrier. And so we just let some things go during that process. And Jody cleaned it up for us because she's really prolific in that space of software for the book design. And she would say, do you mind if I add a little tidbit here that I think would be helpful? And so she's had some of that input as well into the book.
In the tools that we use to share, just one thought with our Colombian friend, is we learned how to translate one Excel box to another so that we could translate our English to Spanish.
Stop.
Yeah.
You figured that out.
Yeah. So it is, making the best use of the tools and all of the tools. If there was a way we could accommodate anybody that we had as part of our team of readers or, advisors, we made every effort to find the right tools because I think we built an incredible team of people as reviewers. So we just wanted to make sure that we encompassed everybody's, their language or their needs in order to be able to produce what you have in your hands.
Sandra Flach, host of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, and FASD educator Debbie Raymond invite you to join Hope for the FASD Journey, a virtual support community for parents and caregivers raising individuals with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, diagnosed or not. This faith-based support community meets online 3 times each month, features special VIP guests, and a private Facebook group for members only, which includes Soul Care Saturday video devotionals led by Sandra and Deb. Both Sandra and Deb are adoptive moms raising kids with FASD and facilitators of the Facets Neurobehavioral Model. For details and to register, visit justicefororphans.ny.org/hope-community. That's justicefororphans.ny.org/hope-community.
So, from personal experience and research, you educate us about the brain in ways that's easy to understand. You provide visuals and charts and diagrams, the stories, all of that, the interventions. You've really written an excellent resource, you guys, for parents and caregivers. So, what is it that you really want parents to get out of the book?
Well, I'll take that one first, Joel. I think for me anyway, the one thing that in my work here in North Dakota that I always tell the parents that I support, is you have to hold on to hope.
Yeah.
Because there are times when you will think your situation is hopeless, and you don't want to go there because once you go there, you're going to end up losing more than you gain. And there's times when my wife and I really struggled with that hope idea. So, and when we founded our nonprofit, our goal was so that parents wouldn't feel alone. There are other people who have navigated this journey, and your journey is going to be wholly different from what Joel and I and our families each experienced. So, but here's a tool that might help you. What works today might not work tomorrow, but it might work again next week. So that was at least my side. What do you think, Joel?
No, it's really similar. And the word embracing hope, it's not just, I embrace my son. So when I was looking at the project name, and there's so many different Facebook support groups that don't have hope in the name, they have broken or something like that. And I needed hope in the process. And part of the journey was when I was out fundraising for the documentary, which will be a prequel. We've decided to put a hold on that until the feature film's done. I had talked to somebody whose twin brother had adopted from Eastern Europe, and both of their kids had this condition. Business person, never shut down, push, and the kids have turned out they've had a rough time. And then his other my friend's other really close friend owns a therapy group, and has maybe 50 or 100 different therapists under it. And he told my friend there's no hope. And I had to call him back later and apologize because I responded with some tone that was like, you're full of it, There's hope. And so the name Hope had to be into that. I embrace my son, and that's where the embrace came from. And there is hope, right? And the chaos, I would argue with you there's a lot of hope. Our son is texting us, calling us, wanting to go fishing with us. We just spent some time catching 6 fish that weighed a total of 80 pounds together. He was in his zone, and he connects with us now because things have changed from the chaos and pushing away from us to pushing into us. Can we go fishing, Dad? Can we watch a soccer game, Dad? Et cetera, et cetera. And so, how many 22-year-olds in this culture do that, let alone a kid with this condition? So, there is a lot of hope, and that needs to be out there. And resource after resource is missing in the scope of all of these interconnected symptoms, and we're on the same journey so many others have been, where you get the ADHD and the trauma, and they're kind of helpful, but not all the way. And because FASD is remarkably complex and oftentimes misdiagnosed.
Yeah.
And we came across some research even on that ADHD side not too long ago that was really interesting in terms of I'm not going to get into the details at this point, but it's been very deliberate at times to give an ADHD diagnosis instead of FASD. There's been research around that. So our family needed hope. What we've learned is remarkable because of folks like Jared and other researchers that have gone before us doing the brain-based and the clinical things. There just needed to be a resource that was more parent-based, that you could do at home.
Right.
And so that's our hope, is that we can get FASD recognized and mitigate the chaos in homes and set children free with their strengths. You know, they don't oftentimes get a opportunity because they've been pushed and they react and they end up in jail or a halfway home or not given opportunities, when in fact they think different and they are oftentimes brilliant.
Mm. Yeah.
They just need opportunities and support, which they don't have. And so hopefully this is a conversation that gets those systems moving in the right direction, that can support our kids. So,
Yeah, I love that. So I know at the end of each chapter, you include a QR code so readers can go to your website to get more resources. So you have a website. What is the web address so our readers or our listeners can find your information there as well?
It's embracinghopebook.com, and we are actively building that. It's not complete. We have so much stuff that it is a work in progress. So, but
it's live, so we can go
it
there.
is live, yes, and there will be new information added daily, Monday through Friday, and sometimes on the weekend if I can't sleep. But yeah, we are working to get that as complete as humanly possible, but there is a lot of information available now.
Yeah, so that's embracinghopebook.com. And now I know, Joel, you've referred to a lot of the FASD projects that you have been working on. So is there a website where all of the things that you're doing lives? Is there a separate website for that?
yeah, it's called embracedmovement.org. So part of this is a nonprofit. We'll park some of our profits into that to give back, but also the nonprofit is working with the film to get off the ground, both films to get off the ground. So being a partner in that process, so people can make a donation if they want to at embracedmovement.org. And then the feature film is embracingzach.com.
Yeah, so because we've talked about all kinds of different things, projects that you're working on, super quick, if you just want to give a list, if they go to embracingmovement.com.
Embraced as
Embraced.
in ED. Yep. Embracedmovement.org.
Okay. So, and we will put links in the show notes to both the book website and embracedmovement.org. But if you could just give us a quick rundown on all of those film projects, all the projects that you have been working on under Embraced Movement.
Yeah, so embracemovement.org, you'll find like the about, and they can do a pull down and see a little snippet on there. Primarily, we have the feature film there, front and center at the moment, but you can find the other links to Jody's book and to our Embracing Hope book, and we'll just continue to add as we go on that. But Carl and I, one of the breaks that we took was to write for an app, and I had an idea for an app, and we learned that Carl also had an idea for an app. And the idea is to start with the parents and provide real live input to the team behind for the family, and start with 9-year-olds. And we applied for the NIH grant, and we made it through all 3 rounds. And we will call that app Embraced Hero. I forget what we've changed it. We had one name, and we're shifting to a new name. Carl, if you get that, pull it up here. Embraced Hero.
Yeah, it's
I'm sorry.
Embraced Hero, or Heroes Embraced.
Hero. So
Heroes
it's based
Embraced.
on in the world of film, the hero's journey. So it's based on the journey for our kids with that. So that name, we had also a different name when we first applied last year, and we're shifting that as we're getting ready to reapply for that. But the idea is the app takes away the emotion, and Zach and Q and Shay, they'll be the teachers for our 9-year-olds. And you get a chance to do the metacognition in a way that can be, in a secure way, be vetted, so that the therapist and the parents and the school teacher, etc., can watch their interaction to how they respond to a story, and how do they process cause and effect, right? And to get real live results back, so that the team now can start to work with the child. And with AI and with some of Carl's tech pieces, if you answer a question, say question A as a positive, AI will understand and know where to take you next. Or if you answer question A in a negative way, it'll present a question in a different way. And so it's a sophisticated way of doing metacognition and theory of mind, which is being able to take other people's perspectives, etc., and putting it in an app piece. And so a feature film called Embracing Zach, a documentary called Embrace, Truth About FASD, and we'll take the journey of Zach from birth to high school. And the high school scene will be the handoff to where the feature film started. Jody's book, the novel, the Embracing Hope caregiver book, the first of several series will be Embracing Different, which is a church leader guide, and we'll have a number of other kinds of things. And our 4 fictional characters are woven throughout all of those. We hope to have some online courses and curricula. We've already drafted an idea for pediatricians, but we're not pediatricians. So we'll need some help in all that process. And the list goes on. Who knows what the vision is going to. I started with a documentary and wanting to help my son, and started to learn there's a need, because we went through 9 schools and not a single professional, not a single teacher, not a single after-school program, not a single therapist. I called or communicated with our therapist, who got us in the ballpark with trauma, child play therapy kinds of stuff, that Sam had been diagnosed at 14 with FASD under the umbrella. And she goes, oh, I need to learn more about that. So CEUs are going to be a part of this.
Great.
But it's just got to be one step at a time.
Yeah. So many great ideas.
And we'd love to speak at, if you have a conference and you're watching this and you need somebody to come talk to your conference, you let us know. We'll come talk.
I can connect you right there. So
Yes.
yeah, no, all great stuff. And I know we could talk all day long. The book again is Embracing Hope, Innovative Strategies to Empower Parents Raising Neurodiverse Teens by Carl Young and Joel Sheagren, two adoptive dads with lived experience. You've been hearing it here. And this new book is an excellent resource for every parent, especially those listening to this podcast, our adoptive and foster parents like us, guys. And so as we wrap up, got to land the plane somewhere here. Would you each take a moment to offer some encouraging words for our listeners, knowing that they are parents like us on this journey?
We burned out a number of different social workers through our journey, and became burned out ourselves, and that's perfectly normal. The big thing there is to not give in to the hopelessness. You have to hold on to hope. We learned that the hard way with our son. And I've taken to telling parents, never let go of hope. Always keep that in your toolbox, even if it's just a sliver. Joel?
Well, to dovetail on that, self-care is important, and sleep can make all the difference in how you process hope, even if it's an hour. The little things Kim and I try to review, are starting to review more and more often, the small successes, because it's easy to, as a visionary, to look forward and to project. And then that can also become damaging if it's like, oh, I'm not there, and things aren't grandiose, etc. What about the fact that they texted you and said, hey, I'm at the mall, I'll be home at 10? That is major in our world.
Yeah.
Just absolutely major. And so take time to note those and to journal them, and don't forget them, and learn the little bits. Like, one of the things that I learned that made a big trajectory, and so parents, as you start to learn little things like processing speed, and you see it work, rejoice in that. So I used to, hey, do the dishes. Rah, 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 right? And you move towards them, and 3 days later, they've finally settled, right? You've pushed them over the cliff and you had no idea what was going on there, and you're frustrated and trying to use logic, and are in that process. Hey, in 5 minutes, would you mind doing the dishes? You still get to push back, but walk away, and guess what they're doing in 5 minutes, whatever chore that might be. So along that same line, our kids can't oftentimes. It's not that they won't.
Yeah.
And understanding that just gives a whole lot of grace for our kids. And chapter 20 is based on the fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when all else fails, exercise the fruit of the Spirit, for your own sake. And in doing so, you'll build a safer community for your kid. And one step at a time, they start to feel safe.
Success looks different for everybody.
Yeah.
My son's a success in ways I never thought possible.
Yeah, I hear you. My 19-year-old got a job a year ago washing dishes in a local restaurant. And when he was offered the job, he wasn't applying for the job. And I was standing behind him when the woman who owns the restaurant offered him the job. And I was going, no, you have no idea. And because I don't think he's ever washed a dish at home, really. So I didn't think he could even do it. And she called me and said, I've hired kids with autism before. So just tell me what I need to know about your son. I want to give him this opportunity. And he's had this job for a year with accommodations, right? There's accommodations there, but not only is he learning he's doing the dishes, but I've seen him in that environment doing tasks that I was blown away. Like I had no idea he could do. And so, at home, I've even been able to be like, I wonder, because I used to just not ask him to do things thinking he probably couldn't do it. Right. And now I can, every once in a while, he'll even surprise me at home. Um, but and so I consider being a dishwasher in a restaurant. He can only handle working 3 nights a week. That's a success. That's a huge success for us. So,
Yeah, that's doing meaningful work.
yes. Yeah. Love it. So, Carl, Joel, thank you so much for collaborating on this incredible work. I know it's going to be an invaluable resource for parents and caregivers and all of the things that you guys are doing, on behalf of the FASD community. Greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And thank you all for listening to this FASD month edition of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey. I hope you were inspired and encouraged by my conversation with Carl Young and Joel Sheagren. Be sure to check out their book, Embracing Hope, and visit their website. Again, you can scroll down to the show notes and find links to all of those things because we want you to be able to access that great, great resource. In addition to encouraging you and equipping you through this podcast, I've got some great resources for your parenting journey as well. You heard in the commercial about our Hope for the FASD Journey support community. And I also offer FASD one-on-one parent coaching online, as well as our in-person and online training and workshops. So to learn more about all of those things, you would go to our website again, as I mentioned earlier, justicefororphansny.org, link in the show notes. And then you'll be able to just click on the Adoption and Foster Care Journey circle, and that will take you to all of the things that I mentioned here on the podcast, the resources that we offer. As a mom of 2 young adults with fetal alcohol syndrome, I spent years trying to figure it out, right? As you just heard with Carl and Joel, it's very, very common that that's the case. Became trauma informed, did the connected parenting strategies. All of that worked great until they didn't. And really, FASD is so prevalent among the population of children in adoptive homes, in foster care, and we really need to learn and understand about this. And we offer resources here to help you be able to do that. Every month, I offer a free 1-hour online intro to FASD workshop. It is not recorded. It is live. It is me. You can ask questions. That's a great way to get started learning to really understand the impact prenatal exposure to alcohol has on the developing brain, the symptoms of FASD, and how to take a brain-based approach to parenting your kiddos. You'll get the tools that you need that will help you help your kid. And I also offer anywhere from a 3-hour workshop to a 15-hour 5-session workshop offered online, also offer it in person. So you can dig deeper, you can learn more. I am a certified facilitator of the Facets Neurobehavioral Approach, so I weave that in there. So for parents and anyone working with our kids, with brain differences, including FASD. We offer this training, and we want you to be able to access that. So stay tuned, go to our website, find out when all of those workshops are coming up. I do know I'll be offering a 5-session. It's once a week for 3 hours a week. Our deep dive into FASD, that will begin the end. I believe it's going to be October 30th that will start. So online. So again, go to the website, check out all the things that are scheduled there that you can take advantage of. And I hope that you will do that. And my latest blog post is about the good and the grief, and that you can now find on our website as well. So I hope that you will do that. Subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, tell your fellow fostering and adopting friends about it so that they can access this podcast as a resource as well. Go to our socials, find and follow the Adoption and Foster Care Journey. Do all of the things so that we can stay connected. I am grateful that you connected with me today. To have you along for this journey. I'm thrilled. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time for our next FASD month episode on this podcast.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, brought to you by Justice for Orphans. We hope you were encouraged today. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, and share it with your fellow foster and adoptive parent friends, so they can be encouraged too. Be sure to find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Justice for Orphans. And check out our website for vital resources at justicefororphansny.org.